Hello audience, Mr. Z here, and today we'll be discussing the Iberian Union, perhaps the greatest representation of the expansive size and capability of the Spanish Empire, an empire which before Britain ruled the seas and spread its reach to the New World. Spain and Portugal, the modern-day occupiers of the Iberian Peninsula, date their existence to the centuries-long Reconquista, in which the Christian kingdoms of Iberia pushed back against the Caliphate which had engulfed their homelands. From this peninsula emerged numerous fragments, the kingdoms of Portugal, Castile, Aragon, and Navarre, some of which, along with possibly some other smaller states, would unify under the crown of Habsburg into Spain during the early 1500s. However, even earlier on, the Spanish kingdoms were making great progress with the discovery of the New World in 1492, and the establishment of a formidable navy fleet, the strongest of its time, mind you. Portugal, however, would soon face calamity after the death of young King Sebastian, who, without any immediate heirs, and having been lost in battle, complicated the line of succession to the point of war breaking out over who was the rightful heir. The throne would eventually fall to King Philip II of Spain, incorporating another Iberian kingdom into the Spanish Empire, and by 1600 expanding Spain's territorial gains to their highest point, encompassing all of Iberia, Central America, ports in Africa, numerous islands in the Caribbean and Pacific, as well as the east and west coasts of South America. However, as time went on, Spain grew bolder and more daring, leading it to sour ties with nearly every European power at the time. This would be bad for Portugal, who was dependent on trade to sustain its economy, but was bound by Spain's foreign policy, thus costing it numerous trading partners, and nearly its centuries-long ally of Britain. Things would only worsen for Portugal with the occupation of territory within Brazil by the Dutch, which would escalate into a full-on war, eventually ending the Dutch occupation of Brazil. However, as time went on, Spain would go on to make things more trying for the Portuguese, seemingly targeting their merchants for higher taxation, ousting Portuguese nobility and replacing them with Spanish officials, all of this eventually culminating in Spain proposing the conversion of Portugal into a Spanish province. But see, despite what you might think, Portugal did not want to be assimilated into Spain. Actually, looking at the country today, that might be the case for much of its territory. Portugal, however, sort of found itself in this situation through a run of bad luck, and I'm sure there are some who may argue the War of Succession to the Portuguese throne was almost a conquest of the kingdom. However, no matter how you slice it, the matter is clear that for the Union to last, Portugal is going to need to be granted more authority, or at the very least, not trampled over to the point of launching a restoration war like in our timeline. Spain needs to rework the entire framework of its union if it is to survive, even with Portugal, as it is during this time that Spain's excessive bravado, careless spending, and disorganized colonization would lead it into a severe financial tailspin, costing it not only Portugal, but its holdings in Italy, the Netherlands, and the American colonies soon after. So, taking Spain down a more precautious route this time around, let's get right into this. A major hurdle for the initial smooth operation of a united Iberia would be the matter of Spain's legitimacy to the Portuguese throne. Luckily for us, history provides such an opportunity to resolve this, as sometime before his death, King Sebastian of Portugal had made plans to marry Isabella Clara Eugenia, daughter of King Philip II. This does of course mean that he'd be marrying his first cousin, but such a practice wasn't uncommon to the Spanish Habsburgs. As a matter of fact, they're famously known as the royal line that inbred themselves into extinction. But incestuous relations aside, this marriage would spell the uniting of the two kingdoms without the needed bloodshed of the succession war, and with the added bonus of a Portuguese king leading the line, meaning a higher standard for Portugal within the Union, automatically we're off to a better start. However, we still need to deal with the reign of King Philip, who would blow the country's entire budget on fruitless crusades against the Dutch, English, and Ottomans, literally until his death. This also likely means the end of relations between Portugal and England. Well, goddamn, this isn't much better. So, we're going to also assume that sometime following Sebastian's marriage, King Philip suddenly dies. Sebastian of Portugal would likely seem to be the best fit to lead Iberia during this time, sharing his uncle's military and expansionist ideals, but maintaining a better balance. King Philip had brought about a Spanish Golden Age, only to drive it right into the ground. However, with Sebastian at the helm, the age of Iberian prosperity continues, with the erecting of ornate monuments, further expansion into the Americas, and the development of a united armada, an overhauling of the empire's economy, the establishment of a trade-based credit system in which farmers could repay debt through produce, and an expansion of influence into North Africa, specifically Morocco. Another interesting thing to consider is the new relationship between Iberia and the Netherlands, a territory which was held by Spain, but which broke away because of King Philip's persecution of Protestants, which led to many conflicts with Britain, which lasted for almost 2 decades, and led to numerous financial situations for Spain. However, given Sebastian's past behavior, it's likely this wouldn't be a problem. There does exist a small possibility for things to sour between the two, as like Philip II, Sebastian was also devoutly Catholic. However, unlike Philip, never displayed the same vitriol for Protestantism as his uncle. So, giving him the benefit of the doubt, and making an assessment of his past actions, it seems safe to assume that such a course of action would take place. If this is the case, Iberia, never facing the decline brought about by needless wars with Britain and the Dutch, is able to not only maintain a tremendous hold upon its colonies, but expand even further into the Pacific and across the African coast. A close alliance would soon form with Britain, with whom the two would gradually outcompete France, costing it many of its colonial holdings. All the while, campaigns are launched within North Africa against Islamic groups, specifically against the Ottoman Empire. Iberia would go on to become one of the most significant and prominent empires in all of Europe. That is, however, until the bloodline of the Spanish Habsburgs goes extinct. As stated before, they had a terrible propensity for inbreeding, and this likely means that the empire will fall eventually. When that is probably sometime in the mid to late 1800s, during which it's possible that the Austrian Habsburgs will seize much of their territory. However, there also rises the possibility for many of these territories to become independent. Whatever course that does take, however, I leave up for you to decide. So, thank you all for watching. Be sure to let me know your thoughts in the comments below, like the video if you enjoyed it, and subscribe for more. Mr. Z, out.